First of all, I wanted to give people the number if you wanna join in the Zoom live. So you can send a message to 732-444-8549. I think that's what it says here. If not, then you'll get to someone else. So, you'll get added to the group, and yeah, okay. So let's go straight into the Rambam's Akdama to Shemona Pirkei, and from there, let's see how much we could get covered today. We might go a little over time. We might go like something to 20 minutes. Okay, the mass is like this. So let's start reading. So the first, right when we start Shemona Pirkei, so the first few lines the Rambam says. So this is not. So again, the Shemona Pirkei is 8 chapters. The Rambam's Hakdama to Pirkei Avos. And to these 8 chapters, we have a Hakdama. And this Hakdama starts by saying, first check out, why is Mesechtes Avos in Seder Nezikin? And we said, what's so special about Mesechtes Avos? And the Rambam says, and so many times in the middle of writing this parish on Mishnah, so the parish of Mishnah, Rambam is starting from Mesechtes Brachos until he gets through Zerah, Moed, Nashim, Nezikin, Avos, which is all the way at the end. He says, I've told you that we're going to, whenever we come to questions, whether it's in Emunah, in Midas, whatever it is, the Rambam says we'll discuss it in Mesechtes Avos because that's where the sugi is at. So here we are. And because Mesechtes Avos is so fundamental and so important, that's why I need to make extra Akdama from Mesechtes Avos. Fine. And then the Rambam says, so we're going to, he says, so he says the reason why we might, it might seem to you that I'm going to have this arichas over here is because even though Mesechtes Avos seems simple on the first, the first glance, Mesechtes Avos seems very simple, right? It's not complicated, very, very straightforward, very simple. You see what you get. But he says 2 things. First of all, even though the words might seem, very self-understood and straightforward, but it's easier said than done. The things in Mesechtes Avos are in generally easier said than done. That's first of all. We all sometimes, not we all know, but sometimes we know the right thing, but to implement that and actually make that part of our lives and change the trajectory of our lives based on the things that we know might be a bigger challenge than it would seem, initially. So that's why we should, spend some more time in understanding Mesechtes Avos, because then maybe we would also understand what we need to do to actually implement these things and understand not only what these things are, but also why they're so central to our lives. Why are they going to change our lives? How are they going to change our lives? Why is this so instrumental? Why is it so important? So that's why, even though Mesechtes Avos might be simple, but because it's easier said than done, and there's a bigger picture, that's why we have to spend some more time in it. That's number one. And number two is, even it might be, misleading. It might look very simple in the first glance, but it's not. There's a lot more hiding behind the text than you would think initially. So he says, Hine. So the first thing he says is, even though Mesechtes Avos seems to be so simple and straightforward, it's not so easy to implement this. That's first of all. And then he says, and it's not so simple. So read between the lines. You might need so why is it so important to invest in this? The Rambam says, because that's going to bring you shleimus and real success and happiness eventually, and anything that comes with shleimus and hatzlacha. And that's why we have to spend some more time than you would think. Okay, fine. Now he says like this. The Gemara says that whoever wants to be a chassid should learn Mesechtes Avos. And in our system, in our worldview, there's nothing higher than chassidus besides of nevuah. And chassidus is what brings a person to nevuah. Hisbar medvreim shamase b'musar ezos hamesechta mevia lanavuo b'mnei shehi koleles chele god memalas hamidus. Okay, you have to understand what this means. So the Rambam says like this. The Gemara says, whoever wants to be a chassid, whoever wants to be a chassid should learn Pirkei Avos. Now, what's the significance of being a chassid? So being a chassid in a different brayz, in the brayz of Pirkei Yoel, so chassidus mevia ladei ruach hakodesh. So you have an entire ladder. Everyone is familiar with it from the Mesilas Yesharim. They built his entire sefer in this template. So you have starting with Zehiris and Zrizus, and you go up to Nekiyas, you go all these different midas, and then eventually you come to Chassidus. Chassidus is the highest mile, and then from Chassidus you come to Ruach HaKodesh. And that is the Tachlis, and that's where we, and there's nothing higher than Ruach HaKodesh. So I want to we have to understand the Rambam's worldview, the Rambam's value system, and we'll have a deeper appreciation for what he's saying over here. So the Rambam, the Akdama to Sheshes Seder Mishnah, the Akdama that we saw yesterday. So it's a very long Akdama, and there's a lot of Yesodis there. And the Rambam asks a very gewaldige question. He says like this: Da, the Kadmonim had a gewaldige Chakira. And the question was like this. We assume that everything in the world has a purpose. There's nothing in the world that doesn't have a purpose. And even sometimes, we don't always understand the purpose, the function of something, but that's not because it doesn't have a purpose. Everything in the world has a purpose. So everything has a tachlis. So, l'mashal, in instruments that you'll see, if you see an axe, then everyone understands that this axe is here for nothing. No one would do such a thing for nothing. It has a certain function. Now, even though you could do other things with an axe, even though you could use an axe to itch your back, let's say, but that's not the primary function of what the tachlis of this axe. So everything in the world has a primary function, what it serves. Now, in most things in the world, they're pretty straightforward. In the more advanced your knowledge in biology, let's say in zoology and in physics and whatever it is, the more you'll understand the world around us, and the more you understand not only the nature of things that people create, like an axe, and like a radio, and like a watch, but you'll understand the function of things in creation also. There's certain insects and animals and rain and soil and bacteria. There's ein gvul v'tach, ein cheker l'tvanasa. And the more you'll explore, the more you'll understand. And the question is, what is the tachlis of a person? A person has so many, you can look at a person, a person could do so many things. He's like a Swiss knife, right? There's a million different tools in this thing. So what is the tachlis? Why is the person here? That's a tremendous question. It's the question of existence, right? And now, what difference does it make? Because once you'll know what the tachlis of a person is, then I can tell you, this is the goal. Yogi Berra is a catcher for the Yankees. The Hall of Famer. So he had all these crazy sayings. So he had this gewaldige saying that says, you have to be careful when you don't know where you're going, because you might not get there. So, right, because if I know my tachlis, if I know where I'm striving, and if I know what the final product is supposed to look like, then even though I'm very, very far from it, and it could take, and it will take, a lifetime of serious, rigorous, intense work. But if I know what the end goal is, then I know, what things I need to put in place to get there. And I know when I had a bad day, and when I had a good day, and I know what I need to fix. Everything depends if you know where you want to go. If you don't know where you want to go, then there's no progress. By definition, there's no progress, right? If I tell you go and you start going, are you making progress? You're not making progress. Even if you walk 1,000 miles, you're not making progress because you don't have a goal. Right? So the first thing is we have to determine right at the get-go, where is it that we're trying to get? What are we striving? What's our vision? Because if not, you can have a guy working for 80 years and even doing good things, but he's not getting anywhere because he never defined where he wants to get. So that's why, even though the Rambam doesn't go into that much detail right here, but there's a tremendous amount packed into that little sentence, and especially in the Rambam's worldview. Now, So the philosophers says the Rambam Dagdama to Beresh Mishnah, what is the tachlis of a person? The person can do so many things. How do I know? A watch is straightforward, the axe is straightforward, the table is straightforward. I know what this table is here for. I can use it for a million things. I can use it to keep the door shut, but that's not what it's here for. The question is, what is a person here for? So the Rambam says, and this is something the Rambam reiterates throughout his works, and this is something extremely fundamental to the Rambam's worldview, and that is that the tachlis of a person is his das. That is the shlemus of a person. The person, the key component, the key defining, definitive characteristic of a person is his das, is his intellect, is his mind, and that is what separates him from an animal. That's what his consciousness. That's what separates him from the entire world. Right? He's the only thing in the world that has consciousness. He's the only thing that has an independent mind, and he has intellect. So the tachlis of a person is to use his intellect to get to the emes. And everything else is here to serve that tachlis. Now, as far as a person uses his mind, I don't even remember what was that. I'm going to go to 50. As far as a person uses his mind to get to the emes, and by the emes, he means, here, I'll read the words that he says inside. Hold on. Through his logic, through his mind. He's an animal with intellect. That he should get to abstract knowledge, true knowledge, and the truest thing that a person can ever reach to with his understanding, with his mind, is so everything else in the world, so even other sciences, and so the general sciences, the shmuz for a different time, but physics and metaphysics, these are the keys in which a person, when he taps into his intellect and attains wisdom, and is masig achdus Hashem, and he connects to the Rebbeinu Shalom through his das, through understanding the mitzias of the Eibishter, and understanding the true mitzias of the Eibishter, that is the tachlis of a person. Now, to get to that point, and there's something we're going to see in great length in Shemona Prakim, you have to get rid of, you have to work on your midas. So that, what he said, and that's the next line he says, because he says, if you want to get the abstract knowledge and intellect, you can't indulge your whole life in taivas and whatever it is, because that's going to distort your wisdom, that's going to distort your knowledge, going to distort your thinking, and you won't be able to get everything that you're going to think. It's going to be upside down. Instead of your mind and your intellect controlling what you think, it's going to be your guf. And the only way you can really get the clear seichel and das is if you break your guf, if you distance yourself from taivas and materialism and physical, money and power and greed and all these things, because all these things are distractions. And whatever wisdom you're going to come to from a point of view that when you didn't work on yourself, it's all going to be distorted because you don't have a clear mind. You're going to be distracted, and you don't have a clear mind, and not only that, your mind is going to be manipulated by the way your inner whatever wants to shlap you. So let's see what we saw here. The tachlis of a person, what makes a person unique in the entire bria, is his das. He's the only creature that has intellect. He's the only one that could attain wisdom and actually be masig emes. Now the Rebbeinu Shalom is emes. Emes is that the Rebbeinu Shalom is the only thing in the world that has real existence. It exists on its own right, and everything else, that's how the Rambam starts off his Rambam. And everything else only exists because of the Rebbeinu Shalom's existence. So now the Rebbeinu Shalom's existence is emes. And you as a person, you have to strive your whole life to be masig and to actually connect and understand the Rebbeinu Shalom's existence. Now, the only way you could do that, now, if you reach that, that is the closest thing to Nevuah you could get. Emes, real emes, is, if you look at it from the bottom up, right? So the maximum you could attain without divine inspiration, without nevuah, because nevuah is from top down. So nevuah is not your choice. Nevuah is the Rebbeinu Shalom's choice if he wants to share nevuah with you. But the maximum you could do up until nevuah is to develop your mind, develop your intellect, develop your understanding of the Rebbeinu Shalom, his ways with the Bria, his ways. Obviously, there's the only thing you can really know about the Rebbeinu Shalom is his ways in the Bria and his true mitzias. And the only way you can be, and that is the highest thing. A person that's masik, that's Ruach HaKodesh. That is where Ruach HaKodesh is at. So, and the way to do it, the path to do it is to get rid of your body. And that's what he says in the Akdama to Parashah Mishnayos. He says a crazy mamish, like you can make it a bumper sticker. He says, Ki ha'muskal l'rishin yitzayah, shechurban ha'nefesh b'tikon ha'guf, v'tikon ha'nefesh b'churban ha'guf. He says these two things, you have to know in the beginning, if you're going to go on this quest, for true knowledge, the quest to be'emes be masik the Rebbeinu Shalom, to have a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom through your mind and understanding his ways and understanding his mitzias and understanding everything. And that is the tachlis, haskel v'yodei oisi. And really understand the Rebbeinu Shalom, then the only way you do that is tikon hanefesh b'churban haguf. You can't do that if you're greedy, you can't do that if you're jealous, you can't do that if you're competitive, you can't do that if your mind is preoccupied with materialism and taivas and everything else. So, if you want to be a chassid, if you want to actually get to Ruach HaKodesh, get to the highest echelon, the highest levels of perfection, of human perfection is, and the Rambam says it in the Akdama in great length, and I would recommend you read it inside, and that is that it says the tachlis of a person is to be ish chacham v'toiv, to be a chacham and a toiv. Now, so we're going, okay, I'm just another 2 more minutes and then we're done. Chacham v'toiv is very interesting because the way he says it here, let's just get back to Shemona Prakim. He says, and he says, so a chassid is someone who was mekayim el Avos. He b'churban haguf, right? He grew beyond the confines of his body and the body's needs and wants and all that, right? So he's a chassid. He perfected himself, and because he's a chassid, and the only thing is nevuah, v'hiya maviyah now. And Avos, chassidus is what brings a person to nevuah. And so now, when we learn Masechet Avos, our focus is going to be that we churban haguf. Now, not churban haguf in a way that you hurt yourself. It's churban haguf in a way that you understand that the tachlis why you're really here. Because a person can say the tachlis that I'm here is to make money. The tachlis that I'm here is to fix garages. It's shtusim. No person, if you think long enough, you don't think that the tachlis that you're alive is for your job. You have to be crazy. If I were to tell you that the tachlis why you're in this world is just for the job itself, you would leave your job today, because that's not what you want to define you. That's not who you are. Now, everyone understands that the reason why he does his job is because he wants to make money and he wants to be with his family. It's just counterintuitive sometimes because you don't spend time with your family because you're busy with your job. But that's when we lose focus. So if we understand our focus and identity, today's world, identity politics, that's all it's about. The identity of a person, you have to identify. How do you identify yourself? How do you identify your goal, your tachlis in this world? The Rambam says, what makes you a person, what separates you from everything other thing in the world is your das. And you have to use that das to be masik the Rebbeinu Shalom, and that's how you create a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Because when you're masik him, then you understand him, you understand his ways with the Bria, and naturally you want to be more like him. Mahu racham, afata racham. So, we're going to have to elaborate on this a different time. But what's very interesting is that in the Rambam's world, and the Rambam says this in the last paragraph, the closing words of Mar Nevuchim. We're going to need another share for this. But in the Rambam's world, it's like this. The tachlis is das. What brings you to a clear, real, true, authentic das is to work on your midas. And das brings you, although das is the pinnacle, das is everything. Das, when a person has das in his matik, and he has that relationship and he's connected and he's locked in, what that's going to bring is, it's going to bring midas. It's going to bring Pirkei. How? Because mahu racham afata racham. If you really understand the Irish, if you really understand the Rebbeinu Shalom, then that's going to change the way you act. Not because you're working on getting somewhere. It's just naturally you're going to be more like him. So, to wrap it up, we go back to our day. And it's full of greed, and it's full of jealousy, and it's full of competition, and it's all that. But you have to understand that the tachlis, why we're here, and that is to be masik da Eibishter. And the only way we can be masik that is if we are mishaber aguf. What are the words? Tikkun hanefesh b'chorban aguf. So let's work on that. See you again tomorrow. Zayah benched.